The decompression chamber filled with a sickly, sweet mist that made Sarah's modified eyes burn. Through the fog, she watched her fellow survivors huddle in small groups, their wetsuits pulsing with an unsettling synchronicity. Only 137 remained after the first game, their faces haunted by the screams that still echoed through the facility's metal corridors. Teams of 6, Dr. Kane's voice slithered through hidden speakers. Choose wisely, your lives depend on each other now. Sarah felt Marcus's hand on her shoulder, his fingers slightly webbed, just like hers. Lily's mother, they'd learned her name was Andrea, pressed close to them, her breathing ragged with barely contained panic. 3 others joined their group, twins with identical vacant stares, and a man whose wetsuit seemed to ripple independently of his movements. The next challenge is simple, Kane continued, his voice carrying an undercurrent of amusement that made Sarah's stomach turn. Each team will receive an oxygen sphere, navigate the maze, reach the exit, avoid the Humboldt squids. Their ink has been enhanced. The maze entrance loomed before them, a massive archway of corroded metal and bioluminescent algae. Each team received a delicate glass sphere filled with swirling, oxygenated liquid. The sphere's surface was warm to the touch, almost organic, with a faint heartbeat-like pulse. I remember when we first developed these, Sarah whispered, more to herself than the others. Kane said they were for deep-sea exploration, never mentioned they'd be used for this. The maze walls were transparent, offering a view into adjacent corridors where other teams stumbled through darkness, broken only by patches of bioluminescence. Above them, shadows moved with deliberate purpose. Dozens of Humboldt squids, each the size of a small car, their chromatophores flickering with unnatural patterns. They made it through 3 intersections before the first attack. A squid descended rapidly, its tentacles spread wide. The man with the rippling suit, he'd said his name was Chen, raised the sphere above his head, trying to protect it. The squid released a cloud of ink that seemed to move with intelligent purpose, seeking out their bodies like a living thing. "Hold your breath," Sarah screamed, but it was too late. The twins inhaled simultaneously, their bodies going rigid as the neurotoxin took effect. Their eyes rolled back, showing horizontal pupils identical to Sarah's. The squid's tentacles wrapped around them with surgical precision, dragging them up into the darkness. No blood this time. They simply disappeared. The remaining 4 pressed on, their movements becoming increasingly erratic as the suit's modifications accelerated. Sarah caught glimpses of their reflections in the maze walls, their skin taking on a subtle iridescence, fingers and toes beginning to web, gills forming along their necks. They were nearly at the exit when Chen snapped. Another ink cloud had just barely missed them, and the sphere's oxygen supply was running dangerously low. "We're not going to make it," he muttered, his eyes wild. Too heavy, too slow. Before anyone could react, he shoved Andrea directly into an approaching squid's path. The creature's tentacles wrapped around her throat as she screamed Lily's name one final time. Sarah felt something break inside her. The suit's modifications had changed more than her body. They'd altered something fundamental in her mind. She could feel the squids now, sense their movements, anticipate their attacks. More disturbing still, she could feel their hunger. "Run!" she commanded Marcus as she turned to face Chen. Her fingers, now fully webbed, found Chen's throat with preternatural speed. The suit had enhanced her strength too, and she felt his trachea collapse under her grip. But she didn't stop there. Her other hand plunged into his chest, fingers somehow sharp enough to pierce the wetsuit and flesh beneath. Chen's eyes went wide as she pulled out something that pulsed darkly in the bioluminescent light. As Chen's body sank into the darkness, Sarah realized she was no longer breathing through her lungs. The gills along her neck fluttered efficiently, and the water felt more like home than any air ever had. They reached the exit with moments to spare, but victory brought no relief. Through the observation window, Sarah caught her first glimpse of Kane's true form. He stood in the control room above, his body a horrific amalgamation of man and cephalopod. Tentacles writhed where his arms should be, and his skin rippled with complex color patterns that spoke a language Sarah's modified brain was beginning to understand. Magnificent, Kane's voice resonated directly in her mind now. You see, Sarah, our research was never about studying cephalopods. It was about becoming them. Evolution's next step. The others are merely test subjects, but you're adapting perfectly. Sarah turned to Marcus, only to find him convulsing, his wetsuit practically fused to his skin. His face contorted in agony as tentacles burst from his back, his transformation far more violent and uncontrolled than hers. Only you have the perfect genetic compatibility, Kane continued. The others will either die or become mindless drones. But you, my dear Sarah, you will be the mother of a new species. As if in response to his words, Sarah felt movement beneath her skin. Thousands of tiny tentacles writhing just below the surface, waiting to emerge. In the maze behind her, the unsuccessful team's screams turned to gurgles as their transformations began. Her enhanced hearing picked up the sound of cracking bones and tearing flesh as dozens of failed experiments came into being. Kane's laughter echoed through her modified consciousness as the next game's arena door began to open, revealing depths that even her new eyes couldn't penetrate. Shall we begin your true evolution?